District of Clear, am I? Okay, there we are. I'll call to order this District of Clearwater regular council meeting for Tuesday, May 6, 2025 at 2 p.m. I would like to begin by acknowledging we are fortunate to be gathering together on the unceded territory of the Sim people who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. Are there any late items to add to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Moved.
Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? And that passes. Are there any declaration of known conflict of interest or pecuniary interest that anyone would like to state at this point? Seeing none, moving on to item 6. I see the TNRD director is here. Do you wish to say anything for this at this point? Okay.
Your worship.
Come on down.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It was great to see many of you at the Southern Interior Local Government Association conference last week at Merritt's. And there are two subjects that I would like to follow up with you from the conference. One is the topic of BC Transit Service, which I noted it's on the council agenda today, to discuss their new annual operating agreement. I was expecting Ms. White to be here. I thought she would be.
From BC Transit, they're presenting online.
Oh, she is. Okay. Oh, hi, Ms. White. Good afternoon. And yeah, thank you, Ms. White, for meeting with the council and us in the North Thompson today. In our conversation last week, there was a desire to expand transit services in Area A communities with more frequent services. Over the weekend, I observed requests for services on Sunday from Vavenby to Clearwater for youths with bicycles. Despite the economic headwinds, our Area A communities continue to grow with young families. Therefore, I'm keen on being involved in the discussion of service increase for both the Valley Connector and the local area Vavenby to Clearwater to Blackpool service. I did take note of Ms. White's explanation of timetables with the expected earliest implementation, even if we go through all this, to be sometime in 2027. So I'm keen to be part of the discussion as soon as possible. And I'll be sure to update Area A communities that Ms. White's engagement with us today. Second is some inspiration I gained from the keynote speaker, Troika Developments, as I'm sure I saw many of you taking notes when they spoke. I think we all can appreciate the potential impact of the Taseko Yellowhead project in Vavenby on Sim First Nation territory. The inspiration I gained from Troika Development's presentation is that we are able to ask for developers roundtables and give them the end community goal to develop building plans to achieve those goals. As I reached out to Mayor and Council back in 2023, putting the TNRD Solid Waste Services land that was used for the former TMDP work camp within the District of Clearwater to the maximum benefit of all local communities was a priority for Area A. Since then, the TNRD has taken steps to review and establish processes on dealing with TNRD assets for the board to ratify. The last I checked over the weekend with TNRD staff, that property is undergoing some ALR reviews, and in the near term, the plan is still to continue to lease out to Trans Mountain as a storage yard. With that being said, regional districts continue to have less legislative abilities to develop land for socioeconomic benefits compared to municipalities. So I do what I can with the limited powers that I have to offer the District of Clearwater supports should you council have proposals to the TNRD to use that land. Okay, and lastly, speaking of developments, I noticed the correspondence from volunteers for a pump track at the District of Clearwater. As with the off-leash dog park proposal heard at the last council meeting, I also want to say Area A is open to discussion on jointly funding projects that benefits all our communities, such as as we're doing now with the Sportsplex and the library. My email and phone is always open for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple comments on that. Knowing the discussion, and Councillor Frizzle will back me up on this, with BC Transit. BC Transit signs a contract with a local community, usually a municipality, to offer service in an area as a first point of contact or the agreement with. In the case of Clearwater, that is the contract with BC Transit is signed with the District of Clearwater, and though it does encompass service in Area A, that might seem a little bit, restrictive or whatever. But then you look at Ashcroft, and the contract signed with Ashcroft actually also covers the regional district, but also Cache Creek and Clinton as communities as well. So the same situation that Director Zhao is in, with not having a direct say in the contract through the one-on-one contract with BC Transit. Clinton and Cache Creek also are in that situation when it comes to transit in the west side of the TNRD. So it is a bit of a problem, but it's how BC Transit has set it up. I am just so happy that we have, and we'll see the presentation later, shortly actually, that centralization has been held off for now. I think that's the big win. And then to the comments of expansion of service, I think there's a demand there from a lot of people. So, but there is a process for that, and it does take time. So I do know we have the ability to crack open the contract at various points in the contract. I just don't know where that sits right now. And then Troico was interesting. That is a company run by Renee Merrifield, former MLA from the Okanagan. One of the things that I did note that was interesting in her discussion was the use of brownfield development by Troico, which is a huge problem in Clearwater. We have a lot of brownfields. They have become experts at using brownfields to develop new housing and other projects, which is something that we actually haven't looked at here. And considering there are, I believe, at least 10 brownfields properties in Clearwater related to the old CAN4 CTP projects, lands in town, that is kind of an interesting conversation to have, because it wasn't really something on my radar that it would be easy to redevelop those. So thank you for your comments, Director Zhao. Moving on, we'll go to 7.1, a presentation from Mario Parati of BDO in relation to our financial statements. So whenever you can get Mario up and running, we'll start this.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for having me here today. We are here to present the financial statements for the District of Clearwater for the year ended December 31st, 2024, along with our external auditor's report. You do have the full draft financial statements in your package. However, for ease of following along and for anyone in the public that is there, I've prepared a PowerPoint that's going to summarize some of the highlights of the statements. So before we start, I'll just pause on our independent auditor's report. So I'm happy to confirm that if it is Council's pleasure to approve the financial statements as required by the Community Charter, we are proposing a clean audit opinion again this year. So these statements do present fairly the results for the District of Clearwater for the year ended December 31st, 2024. So looking at how you did this year, we're going to start on the statement of financial position. So this is a snapshot of all of your assets and liabilities. And what we can see that your financial assets did increase this year from 16.7 million up to 18.7 million. And the bulk of that increase was in your cash position. However, if we go down to the next item and we look at your liabilities and ignore your MFA debt for a moment, we do see that your liabilities did increase by $1.7 million, and that's because of some large capital grants that are that the money was received, but the projects did not get completed this year. So that is money that will be spent this coming year. And so while the cash position did increase, because a lot of it has already been earmarked and is restricted in accordance with the grant agreements, that's why we see that your net financial position of net financial assets, which is all the cash you have less all your obligations to pay, only went up from 14.2 million to $14.6 million. So just wanted to highlight that this is a theme that we've seen across a lot of municipalities this year, where cash position is up, but that money is already ready to be spent in the coming year in capital projects. When we look at your revenues, now moving to the statement of operations, what we see this year is that we had an unfavorable to budget variance. Total revenues came in at $8.5 million, and that was against a budget of $11.6 million. And we can see the big swing that we have here is in our government transfers. The plan was for $5.9 million, and we came in at 1.9. Now, as I mentioned, there's $1.7 million in grant funding that hasn't been recognized as revenue that you've already received, which makes up part of the difference, and the remainder is some other grants that are for capital purchases that we're waiting on timing for. But over and above that, your revenues were very tight against budget, other than the one area grants, which we understand why. And we look at this slide, just breaking down your revenues by source. Really just want to highlight a third of your revenues, the right side here, $3.5 million is in taxation. So obviously there is a big reliance on taxation, which is why you spend so much time on looking at that budget bylaw and being careful that you get the right rates approved on an annual basis. When we look at expenses came in at $7.7 million, favorable to your budget of $9.3 million. Couple of big swings that we saw. The first is in general government over here on the left. We came in at 2.4 versus a budget of 3.2 million. The big items there was timing of when Wells Gray Community Forest Commission is going to be distributed. Also, some legal and contract services were favorable to budget and underspent this year. The other big item that we see over on the right is your sewer utility, $880,000 versus a budget of 12.2 million or 1.2 million. And again, this is timing of really when your septage is going to be dredged, which is something that didn't happen this year, but of course is going to have to happen. Now, when we bring it all together, we have your annual surplus slide. And so your plan this year, when you prepared the budget back last April, May, was to have a surplus of 2.3 million for accounting purposes, and then spend 6.5 million on capital projects. If we add back your depreciation on your capital assets, we come to a net deficit of $2.3 million was the plan. And that meant that you were going to take 2.3 million out of reserves to fund the residual part of your capital plan. In actual fact, what happened is that our surplus came in lower than expected at $795,000. And again, that's just timing of when the grants are going to be received. We see that 1.7 million sitting in deferred revenue, but you came in under budget because your capital projects were underspent. You planned for the 6.5, you came in at 2 million. So in actual fact, we ended up with a surplus of just under $500,000. And from that, we took half of it and transferred it into reserves, and we were left with a residual surplus of $168,000. So when we look at it in the context of an $11 million planned budget, we came in at $168,000 surplus versus a budget of break even. So very close to your budget this year. It's just, again, understanding that a lot of this variance is just timing and capital. And then the last slide before I open up for questions is just highlighting your accumulated surplus. And when we look at your accumulated surplus, it came in at $55 million, which, as I spoke about earlier, is not what you have in the bank. You have $14 million effectively if you settled all your obligations tomorrow. So when we look at our surplus, we need to understand that the first item, invested in tangible capital assets of $40 million, is not cash. What that number represents is what you've historically spent on all of your infrastructure and capital, less depreciation, less what you owe on it in terms of debt with the MFA. So if we take that number out, we're left with $4 million in unrestricted and $10.8 million in reserve funds. That $4 million in unrestricted sits between general water and sewer funds, and that's the money that management has to execute on the approved budget. Your reserve funds of $10.8 million are either set aside by council or set aside by statute, and they're all listed here. A couple of the highlights that we do want to point out: we still have, 1.3 million left in the Growing Community Fund reserve, which is the money received last year from the province. There's $70,000 in the COVID Safe Restart Reserve, which I understand will be spent in the 2025 budget. The Septage Receiving Reserve of $1.7 million, another large one that we have there set aside. So I'm going to stop there and ask, are there any questions that council has on the financial statements?
Any questions? Council also did see this beforehand. Councillor Sim, I want to check your phone for messages because I did get an answer to your question on that. Any questions from council on this? Councillor Sim?
Thanks very much. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on where you see opportunities for our financial position and where you see any vulnerabilities that we'll be alert to.
So, in terms of vulnerabilities, obviously it's the infrastructure is aging, and also we're looking at a time where, tariffs are still in play. As of the meeting today between the Prime Minister and the President of the United States, it doesn't look like they're going anywhere from what we can see as of right now. So I think the capital planning and making sure that we have sufficient reserve funds set aside to get that infrastructure there, and also making sure that we have sufficient reserve funds that if we look at a situation where grants are available, and it might be something that we weren't going to do for a couple of years, having the money available so we can kickstart and put in our equity into those projects now. Because the other concern that we have is that there's been a lot of grants coming from the federal and provincial governments. And from what I'm hearing from my colleagues, especially in Ottawa, what's going to be happening this year, and are we still going to be seeing those monies? So that's where the vulnerabilities are. In terms of opportunities, I mean, you've improved, through Questica, your budget reporting, and we can see that this year that the variances to budget were easily explainable. I didn't really have a lot to talk about on the financial statements. And so having that enhanced look at your budget and understanding where the numbers are and the accuracies in there, I think is going to be your greatest opportunity, because right now, the name of the game in municipal world is to do more with less. And so the other opportunities is that, this council is very collaborative. You get along with your neighbors, and just talking to your neighbors and, thinking about things like joint procurement. Are there capital projects where everybody needs a certain amount of roads redone? There's other things that could be done and procured jointly. Those are the types of things that you can be looking at doing to see if you can get a bigger buying group in order to go in and leverage your dollars better.
Does that help?
Yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you very much.
And just further on that, to Mario's first point about grants, I met at Silga with the president and the CAO of UBCM, and UBCM is working with Oxford Financial, is what I'm thinking here, Oxford School of Finance, on a cost-benefit analysis of further grants to municipalities in an attempt to stave off the effects of the Trump tariffs. UBCM has shifted all of its analysis focus to what municipalities, federal government and provincial government through grants could do to mitigate the effects of the tariffs on Canadian industry, especially construction, housing, and other services the municipalities would do. So that's a long shot, a long game with them, potentially, but it is out there. So just throw that into the pile. Thank you, Mario.
Your Worship, if I can add one other thing on the tariffs. The other thing to look at, and I can't remember if I had this conversation with your Director of Finance, but Government Finance Officers Association of BC has started a thread in their forum on tariffs, and the goal of this is to start sharing who's doing what. A couple of examples are there is that one, a lot of communities have fire trucks and equipment on order, a lot of it which is subject to tariffs. The National Association of Fire Chiefs has been lobbying the provincial government and has received a 6-month exemption for this equipment. And then, there's other things like an airport client of mine that had ordered a sweeper out of the States. It's coming. It's going to be $250,000 in tariffs. They have one. Toronto Pearson has 8. And so the vendor's actually been lobbying both the U.S. government and the Canadian government, arguing that this is critical equipment to have exemptions there. So the information sharing is out there, and encourage using GFOA as a resource, because that's one thing that they're trying to do is there's a lot of people doing things in the background and trying to get it all into one place so that the finance officers have access to it.
That's fantastic information to have. Thank you for that. Okay, not seeing any questions, so unless Councillor Sims moving it forward, moving it back. Nope, okay. Continue, Mario, thank you.
Okay, and that is actually the conclusion of my presentation in open today.
Oh, we get the short version. Okay, thank you for your time, and thank you to finance staff and yourself for all the work done on this, and I'm really happy to see another clean audit going forward here, so thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, you as well.
So there is a recommendation coming out of this that Council accepts the 2024 audited financial statements as presented by Mario Perotti, manager of BDO Canada LLP, at the May 6, 2025 regular council meeting. What is the desire of council?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Herring, and seconded by Councillor Matheson. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. And then we are moving on to item 7.2, BC Transit presentation. There is a presentation slide deck in your agenda package, and Danica White will be presenting. Hey, nice to see you. Welcome back.
Hello.
And whenever you're ready, just start away. Thank you.
Okay, can you see my presentation and hear me okay?
Yes, we can on both.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me here today. I'll start with a quick land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge with respect that BC Transit delivers our mission on the ancestral territories of Indigenous peoples across British Columbia, and their historical relationship with the land continues to this day. So I'm Danica White. I'm the Government Relations Manager for the Thompson and Kootenay region and the main point of contact for local government partners. I was on maternity leave last year, and you might have heard from my colleague Elise Wren, who was covering for me. So first, I'll get to sort of the most important part. I'm aware that many questions and concerns were raised last year when BC Transit informed local governments in the area about the intent to have 4 of the regional transit systems in the TNRD operated by one partner, and this is sort of this regionalization strategy. So in addition to the written confirmation that I have provided, I wanted to take this opportunity to confirm that BC Transit will continue its contractual relationship with Yellowhead Community Services. And this is, I'll say, indefinitely, intended to be indefinitely, not just a pause while we reconsider. We have heard the feedback, reconsidered the strategy, and are adjusting course. So that BC Transit does monitor and support safe and effective delivery of transit, and will keep working with the operating partner, and these contracts will be renewed annually as they fulfill their contractual obligations with BC Transit. And as well, BC Transit is going to do more to be committed to engaging local governments, including yourselves, in advance of any program changes and strategic shifts. So it's sort of the big thing. Are there any questions about that before I go further into my presentation, which is more about your local transit system?
Any questions at this point?
Or clarifications that I can make?
I think council's had a lot of conversations about this offline or before your presentation over the last few months, but are there anything else, questions that council would like to ask about the situation? And we do appreciate this news, and we do appreciate our partnership with Yellowhead Community Service, so thank you for this information. Not seeing any questions at this end, so feel free to continue.
So the Clearwater Transit System, as you know, connects residents within the region as well as provides service to Kamloops. And ridership has, I'd say, fully recovered from pandemic lows. Ridership and revenue are now a little higher than they were in 2019, which is what we sort of use as our baseline data for ridership and revenue. This is a little bit about your local ridership. So this shows that the average monthly ridership in the 4 routes in Clearwater, and this isn't an apples to apples comparison. The local routes in Clearwater run several times a day, while the Valley Connector only runs twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. But it gives you an idea of the routes that residents are using. And the number 10 Valley Connector is definitely the most well-used route. It connects residents all the way from Blue River to Clearwater and through to Kamloops. I know some of you have experienced this bus ride. I talk a lot to the Yellowhead operators about it as well. The vehicles that deliver this seat up to 17 passengers, depending on the number of wheelchairs and scooters that are on board on any given trip. And some of this data that we have shows that this route averages about 15 passengers per trip, meaning that it's operating very close to full capacity a lot of the time. And ridership data is generally the most important tool for local governments and BC Transit to make informed decisions and investments. In 2014, new onboard technology was installed for your fleet. This sort of Next Ride program or smart bus technology includes automatic vehicle location hardware like GPSs, automatic passenger counters in the doorways, and a customer-facing component for smartphones. So for rural systems, we've been getting new kinds of data since 2014, such as route level ridership information that I just presented. We've been getting insight into some of the most popular bus stops and busiest trip times. And the onboard hardware also tracks bus location in real time and records vehicle speed. So in your local system, we might use this data and look into things like boarding data for each bus stop, maybe to support discussions about cost sharing, current or future services with other governments or agencies that might be interested in partnering. So for transit riders, they can get better trip planning resources from their smartphones and real-time locations for the bus that they're waiting for. And if you are interested, I'd suggest downloading this transit app. Sort of looks like this little green sideways S, or you can use other tools like Google Maps. And if you're in the app looking at the Clearwater system, you can follow sort of buses in real time. So there's these little bus icons, and it might show that the bus is, maybe 3 blocks away or 1 minute away. And it'll give you a better idea of when you can expect the bus to arrive, which is really handy, especially, in poor weather, to know whether the bus might be a minute late or whether you've just missed it. So a little update about your fleet. 2 of the fleet vehicles were recently replaced. So this is a brand new buses, and they have a new look for BC Transit. You'll notice this is a different white and green appearance that they have. And I'll just mention that lease fees with vehicles are standardized. So the monthly fees that you pay for these new vehicles are exactly the same as the monthly fees that you paid for the older vehicles. So fees are consistent, and that's easier for budgeting. But you will likely see some benefits, as maintenance costs with newer vehicles typically are less. So this is good news. These buses are fully accessible like the rest of your fleet. But these new models have this new incline assist system, which is sort of like a winch for loading certain types of wheelchairs. Makes it easier for accessibility. It also has different bike racks that can accommodate wider tires. We're seeing a lot more of these wider sort of mountain biking and fat biking tires. So these new bike racks can accommodate a wider range of bikes. And it does have a new type of convertible infant child seat on board. So it's sort of, if there's young children on board, it provides a safer option for them, and it can be flipped up if there isn't an infant using that seat. There's also safer restraints, so it has a lap and a shoulder belt for passengers, which is particularly important for the Valley Connector when you are doing some longer, sort of more highway distances. It is nice for passengers to have the security of seat belts. So a little bit about community transit partnership agreements. So as you heard, BC Transit does have a formal relationship with the District of Clearwater through an annual operating agreement. And through this, we are able to execute the legislated funding model with the province of BC, where we're able to secure funding from the province that pays for about half of the costs of your transit operations. And then the TNRD funds a portion of local transit through a community transit partnership agreement, which is negotiated between the regional district and Clearwater. And I think one of the things that I'm here for is to facilitate any discussions between the TNRD and the District of Clearwater if you were wanting to explore opportunities of mutual interest or readjust those funding relationships, or if the district was interested in potentially exploring new community transit partnership agreements with other organizations. So I'm certainly here to facilitate that, to provide financial information to help parties make decisions and come to a negotiated agreement. And that is all I have for you today, but I'd be happy to take any questions or speak more specifically about anything that you might be interested in today.
Hey, thank you for your presentation. I really do love the app. I hadn't seen that before. I think that would be a great advantage to a lot of people in Clearwater, and we should find a way to publicize that a little bit locally. Because it does allow for the opportunity, especially with such a large-ranging route, for people to actually maybe more spontaneously use the bus than they have right now. So I've never been able to understand the pattern to our bus ride, even though I know it is scheduled, but that's really fascinating. So that's a great technological advance. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Frizzle.
Hi. When it comes to planning the routes, does BC Transit do that, or do you do that in collaboration with the, Yellowhead Community Services, like the route?
So through the chair.
Yep.
So schedules, routing, and fares are final decisions are ultimately made by the District of Clearwater. When there is a desire to have a change, or we get some feedback from the public or from Yellowhead, we often work with them on seeking information or seeking recommendations, and then any major changes would be brought to council for approval.
Okay, thank you. I do know, as you actually sort of alluded to, the high frequency on the Valley Connector route. I think in the past we had considered things like adding a third day to that on maybe perhaps a Saturday to allow for more access versus enlarging the bus, because I don't think enlarging the bus is probably a feasible option for us at this point, because we have this sort of set fleet here. What would be the process for going around with that negotiation? That is a negotiation between the District of Clearwater and BC Transit if we were to do that. Is there a set time in the contract that is usually looked at, or what are your thoughts on that?
Thanks. So thanks for your interest in that. It's certainly something that's been on my mind, and as you've heard, I've been hearing about it from the regional district as well. So it isn't something that's through the contract, but it is part of an annual process that BC Transit goes through called the Transit Improvement Process. Sort of kicks off every year about this time of year, so it's great that you mention it now. And the general process is we start, seeking interest in different expansion initiatives, like the conversation that we're having now. I go back to my team, can get some costing information for various different initiatives, which I'll mention I've sort of already proactively done to explore just some different, costs for expanding the number 10 service. And then I'd bring those costs back to you. And if there is a commitment to fund that additional service, I'd give you a memorandum of understanding to approve. That usually happens in about the summertime. And we have until typically September and October to sort of review costs, review interest, and ultimately allow you time to commit to that potential expansion. And then BC Transit collects all of the different funding commitments from local governments, bundles it together into a service request package that then goes to the province. It's submitted in the fall. And that's when we seek the matching funding from the province. So local government commits about half the funding of those for those operations. And then we seek the province's share of operating costs. And then in February of 2026, when the provincial budget is released, that's when we would get confirmation about whether that funding has been secured from the province. And then we'd look to potentially implement that service, typically in September. So a conversation now about potentially looking at enhancing service for a particular route, like the number 10 Valley Connector. We'd be looking at talking and committing to that for a potential implementation in September of 2026. And I'll mention a couple other things. One of the alternatives to that, if there is an interest in expanding service, is always to reallocate the existing service that you have. So that would mean taking hours and time and buses away from existing routes and reallocating it to a service that might be of more use or might need those resources more. And that can be done if there was more interest in exploring a cost neutral solution. And one of the other things I'll mention right now when we're talking about getting resources and funding from the province, one of our big challenges right now as a transit agency is the vehicle procurements. So just the wait time for buses tends to be longer, and we tend to have more interest in additional buses than we have access to buses. So it's definitely beneficial and would work in your favor if you're looking at implementing some kind of expansion that would utilize the fleet you already have, instead of requiring us to have additional vehicles to do that service. So implementing additional service, say on the weekend or on an alternative service day, would definitely allow us to do that in a faster and cheaper way for you.
Awesome. Thank you for that very fulsome answer there. Are there further questions from anybody on council? Councillor Bratton, go ahead.
I have one. Well, I might have a couple. You answered most of my other question, is how often do we do a service review, especially as times change and people move in and move out. Maybe routes would need to be adjusted, but you answered that really well. I have another question, and this may or may not be for you. It might be for staff. I'm not sure. The collaboration with the Thompson-Nicoll Regional District, if going by your graph, most of the riders are outside of the District of Clearwater, and I'm just curious what the level of funding, do we look at that at all, or who pays more?
Is it the same sort of 60-40 split that we, so it's much like the Sportsplex, I'm getting the nod that it's a 60-40 split on transit?
So it's not rider based, it's a
flat Great, and I'll let the CAO speak to it, but once again, this service is highly subsidized, right? So
For sure.
I think we only recover less than 10% of the cost. But Mr. Johnson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that the issue of the TNRD agreements and MOUs that we have, we're actually reviewing all of those right now with the goal of looking at it, seeing where they make sense, seeing if they should be expanded or whatever. So staff is looking at that, and we'll be starting discussions with the regional district on that before too long. So, and that is one area that we need to talk about, the funding formula and everything else, right? So.
And it's not just on transit, it's a wide spectrum of agreements that we have with the TNRD. I would think mosquito control, Sportsplex, all things like that are on the table at this point. Any further questions for BC Transit? Councillor Sim.
Thanks very much. With the numbers that you've got for the Valley Connector, have you got a breakdown for where they come from? Like it originates from Vavenby. So how many of that, do you know how many riders come from that area, or from the Blackpool area, or from the Clearwater area?
Respectfully, through the chair, if there was interest in having that data, I can certainly get folks on my team to dive deeper into some of the new data that we have from these passenger counters on board, and I can get back to you with that more detailed analysis.
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is that we've got sort of the origin story for route number 1 and route number 2. So does the new technology that you've got on the buses allow for that easily?
It does, and it would start from, I'd essentially have data just from when this new technology was installed from last, I think, October. So I'd have data from October.
Okay, and then just to follow up on some of the questions that came from around the table, has an official service review been done by BC Transit? I remember something being done as that came forward 2 years ago, but you're suggesting it has to be done locally. Is that what you're saying?
Nope.
Okay, so
we can do service reviews. They tend to, I'll have to look into when your last one was done. We are a shared resource. So I have one, I'll say, transit planner that supports the whole Thompson-Kootenay area, just like I support the whole Thompson-Kootenay area. And if there was interest in having a service review, I'd add it to her work plan. And we'd probably be looking at starting something. It might be a year or two from now, because it wouldn't be something that she could start right away. And there might be other systems that haven't had one, and even a longer time that might take priority. So it would really depend on how urgently you'd want a service review, and if that would fit within the timelines of when BC Transit could take the lead on that.
Yeah, so the intention of the question is simply to say that what you've said to us today is that there's maybe a faster response if any additional service routes are done if you're using existing resources. So the existing resources tied into who's using what, and are they being efficiently used, or can they be stretched differently? So does that come under a service review to make sure that we're maximizing our assets?
Through the chair, it could be done through a service review if there was, at any time, if you direct BC Transit on how you want to change your routes, we can implement that. But it wouldn't come with I'd say, a report behind it.
Okay, yeah. And as I said, I'm just looking at the 83 ridership, that's 5 times a week, 5 times a day. So is that the best route? Like, it used to be a great idea. Is it still a good idea? Like, sometimes we need to refresh ideas and make sure that we're maximizing the benefit for the dollars that are being spent.
Yeah. And thank you for explaining the information that's now available with the new technology, because I think that will help us focus in the future. Even without doing a proper service review, even having some of that data would allow us to sort of point ourselves in the right direction as to what the ridership actually needs here. Any further questions from the table? If none, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for all your work. And congratulations on,
Thanks.
Congratulations on the baby, and congratulations on coming back to work.
Thanks.
Yep, bye-bye. Moving on to item 7.3, Blackpool Fire Department grant and aid request, tactical water tender. Come on down. I see Mr. Savage is coming up. Chief Savage is coming up to present.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell, members of council. Blackpool Fire is here today with regards to a request for funding through the Wells Grey Community Forest Commission. We submitted an application for grant funding through the Wells Grey Community Forest Society. We're approved for $30,000 of a $250,000 ask and matching grant funds. We're referred to the district to follow up with your bylaw 310-8 for funding for the tactical water tender. Now, to put this into perspective, you may have the package in front of you. This has been a long time process, presentation, and effort through our department. Back in 2017, when the fires rolled through here and the follow-up fires, we did reviews of the Philman and the Abbott report and conducted our hazard risks and vulnerabilities assessment. And two of the items that came to view were being able to hit fires on the initial attack quickly, and the other was our lack of water. To that end, we've invested heavily in our water storage for fire suppression water and our tactical delivery systems. In 2020, we partnered with Kinder Morgan, or TMX, and had in donation installed two 10,000 gallon water tanks, one at each fire hall, and then proceeded to expand from that, looking at our fire protection areas, both in the high risk and the high impact residential areas where we had frequent calls for service. The additional 2021 was phase 2 was 3 5,000 gallon water tanks, one at 4 kilometer on Lemieux Creek in Little Fort, Caroline Road in Blackpool, and on North Thompson Old Highway across from the old Star Lake School or the Clearwater Christian Church. And those were sponsored both by our own department budget and with BC Hydro. 2022 saw the 2 additional tanks being established at Blackwater Road and Gravel Pit, and at South Round Top, and those were funded by the Wells Grey Community Forest Society in conjunction with our teams. 2023, 2024, phase 4 and 5, we partnered with Simp First Nations, and with our own budgets, we installed a 5,000 gallon water tank on the east side of the North Thompson River at the Little Fort Ferry crossing, providing fire on the other side of the railroad crossing, so it makes it easier for crews to reload and hit the fires, because that's our high risk area. I don't know if there's some massive amount of metal buried in Fennel Mountain that seems to draw the lightning to it, but we've been there one too many times. We also had a rather large grass fire sparked by the CN rail team when the trains went through, which required response from ourselves, Little Fort, and Clearwater to save the house and the farm that was at that location. The farmer nearly lost a hay barn, hay baler, and a hay wagon. We were putting out spot fires in the middle of the barn, and the water tender we had from Little Fort, which was new to the fleet, had front and rear sprayers, and we laid down a 450 meter wet line along the fence line to stop it from moving across the brown field. If it hadn't been for that, we probably would have lost the house on the other side. Moving forward in 2024, we undertook, with the blessing of Simp, the installation of 3 dry hydrants in the North Thompson River. One at Jim's Cattle Yard in Little Fort, the second at Wolf's Flats at our north-south boundary. And the third on Blackpool Road, where it butts against the North Thompson River, giving us continuous water supply year-round. Those were certified by Federal Underwriter Surveys and tested and met the standards, delivering 955 gallons a minute to their standards. We still hadn't cavitated the pump on the truck. We increased the pressure until cavitation and reached 1244. So each of those dry hydrants are capable of producing 1,244 gallons a minute, which is quite substantial. The fall of 2024, we secured 1,200 feet of both 4-inch and 5-inch supply line so that we could stretch water from those dry hydrants to where they're needed. In addition, 30 horse Tohatsu pumps, which are high volume automatic priming to pull from the hydrants and deliver water. Those have been since placed on 2 flat deck trailers, which are easily ready to be pulled by any pickup or utility truck within the fleet to a dry hydrant or static water source to aid both ourselves and Clearwater. The final phase, phase 6, is what brings us here today. And in addition to putting our trailers into place to enhance the water delivery, we have to look seriously at what we're doing for delivering water outside of our own town. And with that in mind, I would like to provide council with a copy of Schedule B of our mutual aid agreement, if I may. Schedule B of the mutual aid agreement outlines equipment that shall be held in reserve or sent for deployment if requested. For the last 30 years, both ourselves and Clearwater Fire have been in violation of the mutual aid agreement, whereby we've risk managed our resources in order to benefit the communities, save property, and save lives. We've sent our only truck, our only tender, and our crew to support you on many calls. We've had your crews do the same. By rights, according to the schedule of the agreement, we're supposed to withhold 1 engine, 1 tender, and a crew in reserve and not send you a tender, because I only have 1. I'd like to be able to legitimize what we're doing, in addition to providing a service whereby we can deliver the water where it's needed in a tactical manner and assist in providing what's needed when it's required. To that end, if I might have the video played. And this just sums it up in a nutshell as what we've done over the last 5 years. My name is Mike Savage, and I'm the fire chief for Blackpool Fire and the admin chief for Little Fort Fire. Dry hydrants are utilized by the fire service in areas where we don't have existing municipal fire hydrants or water systems. Dry hydrants can be put into rivers or static water sources where we can actually hook onto a end of the pipe and pump from there, either from a truck or from a pump, providing water, whether it be water shuttles or fire suppression or supply lines with a pump to a fire itself. We also have large capacity water storage tanks, both 10,000 gallon and 6,000 gallon tanks, strategically placed within the fire protection area. And by doing this in high density residential areas or high risk areas, a water source that's readily available for our crews to reload tenders and trucks from, allowing them to be back on scene, providing water to the fire as needed. This also serves to reduce Code 3 driving time, whereby our trucks are not in traffic any longer than they absolutely have to be in an emergency situation. It reduces our risk for motor vehicle collisions or involvement with the public where we don't need them. In places where people have structures and feel that a fire protection service wouldn't benefit them, one has to ask themselves, what price do you put on safety? Where we can come in and put water on a fire quickly, knock it down, save a portion of a structure or your valuables, that's priceless. A fire doubles in size every minute. Once we get a call, our average response time as a volunteer haul from time of dispatch to the time of a truck leaving the apron is 8 minutes. Once we arrive on scene, initial attack starts. Having the availability of water tenders that can go to either dry hydrants or to the water storage tanks means we can put more water on the fire in a quicker period of time, enabling us to reduce the loss, save lives, and stabilize the situation. Thank you. So just to build from that, we've had some fairly significant fires involving vehicles on highways that have led to fatalities. When those calls come in the middle of the night, water tenders from vendors such as OnCall are not readily available. We risk manage, we send tenders, we send trucks, and we try to save lives. We need the fleet, we need the trucks. If we don't have them, we can't do the job. We have matching funds that we're looking to put up for this, and we'd very much like your support in helping us achieve that goal. Having a second tender in the fleet means I can leave one at the hall without compromising our own home front, send it where it's needed for you guys or for the other people in Area A, and still be able to make that response. Now, some people have said, well, you're just going to use this as a cash cow and you're going to take and send these trucks out for deployment. Well, I can tell you, so long as I've been the chief and while I was a deputy chief, I've never sent a tender out. The only tender that I sent was in the middle of the night at midnight when Kamloops called and said they were burning. I sent the Little Fort tender and the engine from our hall, and they were there for 36 hours straight, and then they returned. Water tenders are something you have to garner with importance. They're a critical piece of the operation. If you don't have a water tender, you can't do your job. A recent report underlining NFPA 1142, which is water delivery in the rural area, you need a minimum of 10,000 gallons in order to do your job. 10,000 gallons, our trucks are 2,000s, that's 5 loads. That's 5 trips round. The more time our crews are on the road, the higher the risk is for incidents involving our trucks going code 3 because we have to deal with the other people on the road. Having a tactical tender with sprayers, particularly when it comes to wildfires, putting down wet lines and putting up guards is critical. In the package we sent, there was a picture, we did a burn down at South Round Top. We sent the tactical tender from Little Fort around the field, half a tank of water, 100 by 450 meters. Lit it up, 27K wind, held it, burned it off. Tactical tender did another round on the second field, same size, and we burned that off. Without the ability to have that, we wouldn't have been able to do it. Putting things in place like that is critical for guarding the areas in which we have to defend, for fire suppression, for doing proper burn-offs, and for public safety. And it just gives an example of how dedicated our folks are to doing the training that we need to do. I have my assistant chief, Dietrich Rempel, Captain Rod Toulette there, and our fire services manager, Jason Tomlin from TNRD Fire Protective Services. Anybody has a question with respect to deployment of units or questions on what we do or how we do, and I can't answer it, one of those 3 will.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions from council? Councillor Masson.
So the tender you're looking at now, what's the gallons on it?
2,000 gallons. We carry 2,000 on our current one, 2,000 at the Little Fort one. Both of them are equipped with 2 2,000 gallon drop tanks. So when we come up on a fire, we can deploy 2 drop tanks, dump the load and go, reload, come back, or the second truck in hits the other one. So we always have 2,000 on site. Your average engine carries anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 gallons on them. So by dropping 2,000 gallons, you're giving them an extra 8 to 10 minutes of fighting time if they're running more than 2 or 3 lines. If they're running their monitor, they can go through a tank in 4 minutes.
Thank you for that answer. Further questions? Councillor Sim?
Thanks very much. So in your opening comments, you mentioned about the MOU. When was everybody in compliance with the MOU?
Pardon me?
When was everybody in compliance with the MOU?
We never have been.
Why did we sign it?
Why haven't we?
Why did we? Like, if we weren't in
Well,
compliance.
the thing is, this was set out years ago. I just read the new version. And I'm looking at paragraph F. And for basically 30 years, we've been risk managing it, sending our crews to support each other where we've needed. And you have to realize in an emergency situation, risk managing your resources and doing what's best for the community is what it's all about.
No, I appreciate that. I just wondered because you had said we're not in compliance. I wanted to know when we were, and then
We
you've
haven't been,
indicated that
unfortunately. We haven't been.
you've indicated that this MOU is 30 years old.
That one's revised in 2021. The current one for signing is 2025, which was just sent back. So you're looking,
Okay. And then if it were to be extended, is there the volunteer capacity to keep one of the vehicles back at
that would be it. If you had something like the school go on fire or this building and you didn't have water, like you've had cases here where your pumps have gone down and we've put our trucks on standby to come.
Yeah, thank you. What I'm asking for is with additional resources like the trucks, is there the volunteer capacities that one would stay in community and then one would go out of community?
One would stay in and one would respond to the request for
And
aid.
you would have volunteer capacity to manage both?
Yes.
Okay.
I have 27 members on
Okay, and
the
that's
roster.
that's what I'm asking, because although you can, there can be sort of work to compliance, but volunteers, I mean, they are a valuable asset, and
Yes.
so, as you say, risk management is often managing, your assets, which includes your people. So that was
We have
the-
27 on the roster, and we look, every call we get, we risk manage what we send. For example, the fire at Musgrave Road, your crews were down to, I think, 5. We responded both engines and the tender to that fire to assist, and we risk managed it. Simply being that the one engine would automatically return with its crew if a call came in.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Herring, go ahead.
Just to confirm, what was the total dollar amount you guys are looking for support in?
It's a 500,000.
From the District of Clearwater or all?
No, that's all combined. We have 250,000 to put in. There's 30,000 from the Wells Gray Community Forest Society. We're asking for 220 from the district for the reserve funds from the Wells Gray Community Forest Commission. Any additional, we would finance through the TNRD.
Thank you.
I'll have a couple questions before. So just absolute clarification, this is expansion of the fleeces. This isn't the replacement of a standard.
This is expansion of the fleet.
Yeah.
The truck we have is 25 years old. It's still very functional. It's a standard. So we actually have to look at upgrading the standard transmission to an automatic to meet the new NFPA requirements.
Just then to refresh my mind, what's the maximum life? Is it 30 years or can we get them up to 35 on trucks?
You can go longer on a tender so long as it meets the certification standards.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
It's the engines that after 20 years become a second line. 25, they become a third line, and you have to have pump testing annually.
Okay, thank you. And I have a couple more, but I think they don't really apply to this presentation, so I'll hold them for now. Anybody else questions at this point? Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to point out to council that when we send out on a mutual aid, we don't send out unless we have the required apparatus at home. So we have a spare tender, so we wouldn't be in that same situation. We can't respond unless we have adequate backup in reserve in case we need it locally.
Okay, thank you. And just, I'll ask actually a couple questions just because I'd like to understand where things go at this point. Birch Island right now, because it did not move forward with the referendum, what happens when you get a house fire in Birch Island? Do you respond?
House fire in Birch Island, we do not respond. If there's a threat to human life, a request would have to go to EMCR, a task would have to be issued, and then you'd be looking at both Clearwater or Blackpool or both being asked to respond.
And compensation for that call out would be through EMCR?
Through EMCR, through a task.
When you get a task number. A second question is along those same lines, and it comes to highway rescue, because you did bring that up, that sometimes you need to send it out for highway rescue on a fire. And I know that your crews have gone well beyond the limits of the sort of boundaries that have been set. Is it the same thing at EMCR, potential cost recovery?
EMCR has to do, well, when you have one where there's threat to human life, and it's an immediate threat is how it's worded. So when you get a report like we did with the semi hitting the CN crew, entrapped, on fire, unknown. When that call went in, I asked for Vavenby to roll south. We headed north, and at the same time asked dispatch to request a fire suppression task to go with it. Just because there's lives involved.
Yeah, no, okay. Thank you for that clarification. It's always a sort of an understanding of, how we deal with these things, or how these things are dealt with as far as the province of BC, because we do know that there's such huge gaps.
It's a fine line.
Yeah.
And it's one that we take serious. It's one that fire dispatch takes serious, and they know the steps that we require. And as soon as the call comes in with more details that we can be provided with, the better we can make a decision. But err on the side of caution when it comes to lives. Our job, they call it LIP, life safety, incident stabilization, property conservation.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions from council or comments from staff? Go ahead, Councillor Sim.
I am wondering from the staff, as Councillor Herring had brought up that link with that organization that you had spoken to.
The federal one, or the national one, that councillors, sorry. Yeah. I think, is that what you're referring to?
I think so, but when you had actually made the presentation to council, you had said that there were different sort of funding avenues through that, and I had thought that there was going to be an introduction of somebody from their organization at some point into council just to learn more. Is this somewhere that would fall under or not? Anybody know?
I think that's a big question. And we, at Councillor Herring's suggestion, we probably need to have them present to us, and then maybe we'd find out through that. So,
yeah, Councillor Herring was really enthusiastic, so maybe you want to say something more on it.
Well, I've provided the contact and link to CAO Johnson, so I've kind of left that ball in staff's court, and when we get that chance, it would be great to have a presentation from them for sure.
Thank you.
okay, and just for me, a clarification from staff, have we received the official request for this grant proposal at this point?
For the grant, no.
No, okay, so that's forthcoming at this point. Yeah, I was just kind of wondering because it's not part of our agenda package. So standard practice at this point is that we take this away, consider this, and bring it back at a future meeting. So hopefully we can do a turnaround on that in a relatively short amount of time once we get the actual formal package. Okay, so thank you for your presentation. If there's nothing further, and thank you for your service. Do a great job, and we really appreciate your crew and everything they do and all the things that they cover in this valley, 3/4 of which we probably don't and never will hear about. So it is much appreciated, the service that your team does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's another form, we weren't informed that it was a form required.
We will contact you shortly after the meeting. You have that form.
Yeah, and that's fine, because we would not make a decision, we never make a decision at the same meeting on any sort of grant request anyway, so.
All right,
But it allows staff to do a proper staff report for a future meeting, so, thank you.
all right.
Thank you. Okay, we do have item 8.1, minutes of the regular council meeting held April 15, 2025. Are there any errors or omissions? If not, can I get a mover and a seconder on that? Councillor Matheson, are you moving that? Thank you. And seconding? Councillor Frizzle, all those in favor? And that passes. Nothing under 9, 10, 11, or 12. I'll just briefly say a few things for Mayor's report, because it's going to be a long day. Pitch-in was great. I'll let Councillor Bratton speak to that. Yesterday I attended the forestry career fair at the high school. Good attendance that. Great speakers as well for the half hour, 45 minutes I was there. Last week was Silga. A couple other councillors can speak to that, but had some good preemptive conversations with BC Hydro. A great tour of the Nicola Valley Institute of Technology, which is a very interesting Institute of Technology, and runs on a model that amazes and mystifies a lot of people, and I wish they would come and set up here. And then lastly, great time at the volunteer brunch. Thank you to staff who set that up, and it was a hit, absolutely hit, and very well attended, and a great morning of conversations with a whole bunch of people. I will move on to Councillor Bratton.
Maybe. I can turn my mic on. Good afternoon. I have, okay, hang on. I wrote this all over the place. I have to say thank you for everybody showing up for pitch-in. Thanks to Mayor Blackwell for doing up the good dogs. They kept everybody fed. And I have to say, what a great addition to everybody coming together, and it just gave us that better connection ability to visit and and thank you very much to staff at the arena for providing me with all my stuff to give out to everybody, meaning bags and gloves and food, and Leanne for going to get the hot dogs, the buns and whatnot. Really appreciate how everybody comes together to help out. And also to the volunteer brunch, good job on staff for organizing that, Leanne being the spearhead, I do believe. And beautiful setting, just love the ski hill for that, well attended. And I just, now that all the first responders left, wanted to give them a big shout out. We did all kinds of shout outs at the event to all volunteers, and how it makes a community one when everybody puts forth their best foot and show their children how they can get involved with their community. And I have to say to the first responders, thank you very much for doing what you do to keep our communities safe and being involved in that capacity, because let's face it, without our first responders, it'd be a pretty scary place to live. And wanted to give, also went to SILGA, which is Southern Interior Local Government Association. Got it. And it was fantastic, rejuvenated me. I saw all kinds of ideas, listened to a bunch of different speeches, and loved Salmon Arms' idea for their tourism. Would love to bring that forth. Hot points is how they're doing their mobile touches within the community. They get involved. They have a third-party group that is getting together with their information board and their district, actually, and they've come together and changed the way tourism is looked at. And we need an economic development person, because I have some ideas. Anyways, I would love to get Silga and Clearwater is another thing. I know everybody looked at me with rolling eyes, but I think it's a great economic driver. That was 200 people that came from all over to fill up Merritt, and all their hotels were filled up. We have an arena. We have a high school gym. We have lots of things we could utilize. Anyways, brain was on fire after listening to everybody. I also went to NVIT as well, and I wrote his name down. no, I lost it. Sorry. Anyhow, he was a very energetic fellow. The ideas they have in that school to keep it going, they're looking more at a more lower socioeconomic families that are there, and their average age is 36 years old. So I thought that very interesting. They're not just grabbing kids out of high school, but he does work energetically at getting kids that wouldn't maybe look at going to university because mom and dad maybe don't have the money, so they won't ask. So he goes and pinpoints the tough questions, gets them involved, and hang on one sec.
And this is an NVIT noting that they have a really impressive grant program to basically pay for first year tuition.
Yes, and if they don't maybe have the money for, because it's a trades school, so if they don't have the money for their gear to begin with, they partner with local businesses and they get them their gear. Might not be Snap-on, might not be, the proper, or like the high knives for the culinary, but they get gear. So it gets them off the ground and running and gets them into school. So I love the innovative thinking, and really is good to see. And I have a few questions that I'd like to. Street sweeping is lovely, and it's been happening, and it seems to be still happening. We have piles of dirt, and I just wanted to clarify with staff that at the end of Ogden and 37 East and the other spots that it's accumulating will be removed, and where does it get removed, and what's our timeline for sweeping to be finalized?
Mr. Johnson, would you like to give an update on street sweeping?
Thank you. Great questions. And I have to say, they're actually questions we're hearing a lot come in on the phone, right? So where we're at as far as status is the priority 1 roads are just about completed.
Okay.
And the priority 1 roads are the main connector routes to the community. After they are completed, then the lower priority roads will be done. So if there's residents at home thinking, why isn't my road being done yet? Well, it's still in process. Our hope is that we're completed on the road sweeping by the end of May. That's the target that was set. If there's equipment breakdowns or whatever, it may stretch that out, but we're hoping by the end of May. With regards to the piles of sand that have appeared in a few spots in the community, yes, Public Works is going to be picking that sand up, as it has done in previous years if there's piles, and we will be removing that and finding uses for it that are allowable uses. Once it's been considered a contaminated product once it's been out on the roads, because the potential for oils or whatever, right? So but there are appropriate uses, so we'll find those appropriate uses, whether that's fill on roads or whatever. We'll make sure it's appropriate before we lay it down. So yes, that
Okay.
Public Works will be
Perfect.
picking those up.
Okay, thank you so much. And I just wanted to bring to light, and I have to comment on one thing. I have to thank North Thompson Waste Management for dropping off the dumpster for me for Pitchin. I forgot to name them. But go back to what I was saying is with Dutch Lake, and there's been a lot of concerned citizens over the colors and the fun stuff that's going on there. And I have inquired to fisheries, and they have inquired to their bio fellows in Kamloops, and we have gotten a report back and of things that are going to happen. Basically, at this point, everything is okay, and we're keeping an eye on it, is what we're told. I hear.
And apparently there has been testing done on that water that we haven't seen that result yet, but we've heard that from some folks, including the fisheries person, that it's a normal process.
Yeah.
It may have happened earlier or a bit more intensely this year, but that turnover of lakes is as we're all aware, is a normal process. So if we get testing results back, we will certainly keep you informed.
Okay, thank you very much. And that's all I have. Sorry, that was really long.
No, that was good. Those are questions that everybody out there in the world wants to hear. So thank you for those inquiries and doing that work. Councillor Fizzle.
Thank you. I also attended the volunteer brunch, which was a lovely way to start your Sunday. And I just had talked to a lot of the volunteers, and they really appreciated the effort that was put out for them. And they were thankful to be recognized, so that was really nice. I also attended the Tourism Wells Gray AGM the evening before, and they had the meeting at the Visitor Center because it's now open as of May 1st, but they wanted to show off their new retail section, and they've redesigned the whole inside of the center. It's so different and it looks so good, and all the merchandise in there is saying it's Wells Gray Park, Clearwater, BC, etc. So it's really nice to see, and lots of really cool stuff in there. And I think everybody in town should go have a look at it and see what we're offering all the visitors we're going to have this summer. And that's my.
I'll note that went in there this morning with my partner, Mrs., and she was able to acquire a Canadian House Hippo t-shirt. So, but yeah, it's fabulous. And if you read the fine print, almost everything in there is labeled as a either locally made or locally modified product. So the t-shirts, everything are either locally printed, locally sourced, or actually constructed. Like the pottery and some of the paintings and artwork is actually completely made local, and the products are fabulous. I've been to a lot of visitor centers, including ones in BC related to BC parks, and I'd say this is top notch. So.
Just to add to that, Claire Hanna made a very concerted effort to get product from Canada first, or actually BC here first, BC second, Canada third, and that's where everything's from. And there's local artists that will be putting things in there as well on commission. So yeah, so there's a wide variety of different things.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Moving on to Councillor Herring.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Councillor McKenzie got called away for emergency work. Moving on to Councillor Matheson.
Thank you. It was a bit of a busy week down at Silga, and I got a lot out of the presentations down there. I think Councillor Bratton covered a lot of it. One thing I might add is that the campus that they have in the Lower Mainland is also open to everybody, not just First Nations.
And VIT, yeah, no, so yeah, they it's not just Indigenous, they are Indigenous focused, and I believe they teach 30 Indigenous languages across the province,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's not just Indigenous.
Yeah, and they have the same benefits, the same everything. So it was pretty cool. Other ones that I got a lot of information out of were strong towns and developing the community, development and engagement with the community. I got a couple of really good ideas out of there about community planning down the road, the OCP, and what we can bring into it. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that later. The other one that kind of was a bit jarring was the mining panel that we had, and I found it very informative. The Highland Valley Copper is the biggest in Canada, and the proposed one here for Yellowhead would be the second biggest one in Canada. And the demand for copper right now is so off the charts that they need another 220 mines of the same size in order to meet demand, which I found was mind-blowing. And that's been driven by electric vehicles, technology, all that kind of stuff. So there's a huge demand for copper. And, you kind of go, okay, I'm feeling a little bit better about maybe a mine coming in here. But what I found of the presentation, it was all about money, economic benefits to the community, and jobs, which I get. But nobody really addressed the fact that we are a small community with a lifestyle, how that is going to impact our community and what kind of community do we want to live in. So we haven't had that conversation with them. They're touting the jobs, they're touting the money and everything it'll bring, but I didn't hear any conversations about what it's going to do to our community and what the mining community will do to help mitigate some of that. And it was a little jarring because they kept saying that we want to have conversations with you. We want stories from the community about all this stuff. And at the end of the presentation, they wouldn't take questions. It was a bit jarring. I know there was a lot of other people in the audience felt the same, that it was about economics, money, shareholders, that was it. And the community just has to take what they give. So it caused me some concerns, and I want to meet with the local representatives here and talk about that. At what point do we pull the trigger where they say the mine is coming, the mine is coming, the mine is coming, and they're putting out advertisements about the mine is coming, and yet they haven't talked to us about what we need for infrastructure and what they will do to help support the infrastructure in our community to meet that growth. So that's the conversation I want to have after this. So it was a bit jarring that we didn't get a chance to have those issues addressed.
Yeah.
And I was at the missing and murdered Indigenous women walk yesterday. It was very well attended. It was a hot walk, and, but it was really well attended, and a lot of people honking the horns on the highways and being very, very positive about it. So that was really good. The other thing, I'll just address this to Chief Smith. I don't know if you're aware of the First Responders and Honor House in Vancouver. Are you aware of them? They provide housing for any first responders, including volunteer fire departments, professionals. If they have sick family down there, they can go down and stay for free.
Yeah.
So I just wasn't sure if you're aware of that or not. I just thought I would mention it.
Yeah, no, thanks for the mention. Yeah, we are aware of it, but it's always good to get it reaffirmed.
Great, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sim.
Thanks very much. Just first of all, Councillor Matheson, to your point about the mining, I think that they actually just posted that position where they would have a community government to government engagement person. So I think that that's probably why that. I think you had also reposted it.
Yeah, so that's the next phase. Generally, consultation with communities doesn't happen. Ironically, it's called the environmental assessment phase, and they haven't actually filed that yet. But that is the official starting gunfire on the process, which usually takes about 5 years in standard form. And we're anticipating that with all the signals out there, including hiring the person that Councillor Sim is talking about, signals that they will move forward with that in the next few months, most likely. So it's a little cart before the horse at this point, but yeah, I think Cora Gagnon would be available to speak to us at any particular time we wanted to. So, or you could fire questions directly towards her as well. So,
I guess my surprise to the whole thing was during the conference, there was established minds talking, and there's no talk, it was about economy and money, and there was no talk about what the impacts it had on the community, which I found there was a big division there. And I know I wasn't the only one that was feeling that same thing.
Yeah, and Logan Lake has been living that dream for a lot of years, and always there will be a bit of caution with that because we've just lived through another major boom project here and seen some of the positive and negative effects of that. So, personally, knowing what we saw by the end of the last big project here, I wish we'd had a much bigger conversation at the beginning, at the front end of that. So, So I'm sure they're listening and they've heard that. So thank you, Councillor Sim. Did you have anything else that you'd like to talk about?
Seriously? Like, is
there was a few points there, but I think you stopped at a point towards Councillor Matheson. So
no, just to bring that up, just to follow up, attended the Ski Hill fundraiser, and thank you very much for Councillor Herring for also attending. It was a really, really good night, and it certainly answered the question: is that we are stronger in community when we are in person with one another. And there was a number of people who said, "I wasn't sure about talking to that person. I didn't know if we still got along," but just being, elbow to elbow with people, it really dissipated. So I think Mayor Blackwell had a long time ago called it social infrastructure. And I think as part of our economic development, we look to our social infrastructure because our community spirit is better when we invest in that rubbing elbows. It goes a long, long way. So I think that's important. I also attended the Interior Logging Association conference in Kamloops, and it was really interesting to see a number of our local operators who are a part of that, and that there's continuing to be that investment into those smaller machineries like what we had seen with the Volt presentation that we presented to the minister. To follow up on Councillor Bratton is just, having an inquiry about that Dutch Lake Health. I would actually like to have a presentation on Dutch Lake Health. We had one between 2011 and 2014, but I can't find those documents on iCompass anymore. So I have a sense it was probably part of a Parks and Recreation. And what it was is that we had an aerial photo. Do you remember this? We had an aerial photo of where the properties on the lake and the impact of septic systems. And so it wasn't just about the yellow iris, it was about some other environmental implications. Well, that must have been, 10 or 12 years ago. So where are we now? And even with the testing, what does that mean? And I'd be interested in knowing when we submitted our sewer upgrade for that part of the community, what did we say about Dutch Lake? And did we talk about that as a part of our grant application?
I think we will be able to find that somewhere in the files. It might be in the paper files, but yes, there was I believe it was an $8+ million grant. It was quite a large grant, and it was probably too large. But it was for a sewer system completely surrounding Dutch Lake, entering through the various subdivisions and connecting up to basically all the households on there. And yes, absolutely, there was some high-level analysis of the likelihood of septage from private fields leaking into Dutch Lake. But I don't know if we went in depth with testing or anything. I don't think we did at that point, but it is a good question to ask. And, back to the conversation earlier that UBCM we have water and sewer priorities at this point that have been identified by staff. But if, UBCM is pitching for that the federal government invest in water, sewer, road networks, that would be a great one to pitch again. I would especially say Harvey, this stretch, and to Dutch Lake Resort as far as hooking into sewer, because large commercial is probably one of the higher risk polluters.
Yeah, I think you've pretty much nailed that. So it would be interesting. And I also think that for me personally, I have neglected the impact of the yellow iris. We perceive it as too expensive, but since listening to community comments about what about this lake and what if we can't, I don't think I've paid it enough attention. And Jean Nelson has been raising this to council since 2009, I think. So it's been a long, long time. And maybe it is time to revive that, especially in conjunction with receiving a presentation about Dutch Lake Health. It is certainly regarded as one of our greatest assets. Is that possible for staff to do?
Thank you. Without looking at the report, I'm not sure what the level of expert assistance required. So everything's possible, but the question is, what's the price tag attached to it? So we can dig into it a little further, find the last report, see what level of expertise was brought to it. Presumably we would want someone specializing in lake health and understanding those issues. So we can bring that back to council for a choice, and here's what it would cost to do an extensive study on it. As the mayor mentioned, the costing around putting septage around the lake, that work has been done. So that could be updated. I believe it was a pretty substantial price tag for that project, probably more than the homeowners around the lake itself would be likely to want to bear.
At the time, I believe it was, we know costs have gone up substantially, but I believe it was about $40,000 to $45,000 per property to buy into that with the current plant. But it was, once again, it was a very extensive plan to touch everything, and to touch into places like the entirety of Dutch Lake subdivision here. Most of which those people have existing septic systems, and really, the likely impact on either the river or the lake is small. So, how do you hit the high spots potentially with a downsize thing without having to make everybody who may not affect the lake water buy into that system?
And I don't know. As I said, I just tried to find it, couldn't find it. But if there is an environmental concern about that, and especially with the turtles, does that change the focus on our grant applications? Because I don't think we included an environmental lens on it. More like we didn't go that deep. So anyway, is it time to revisit it? I really I didn't like the thought that the lake was changing and it couldn't be used. So I just started to look at it differently and realized that maybe it needs a new conversation. Gratitude to the Hospital Auxiliary for the tea that they did. Also to the Curiosity Shop for their donation to Dr. Helmken for the ultrasound. The CSS Girls Soccer are fighting for playoffs, so that's great. I also want to extend congratulations to MP Frank Caputo for returning. I don't know if we've been able, if staff could please send a letter of congratulations from Mayor and Council. Has that been done?
It has not. It has not been requested. I did it online, but I could.
If we could do it for Mayor.
I think I could probably just come up with a card or something.
The reason being, if it came from Mayor and Council, is I can't remember the last time we've had maybe an or had him come and express our priorities, especially as it relates to infrastructure. And doing a little more advocacy on our behalf and getting more in depth with our community. He's had 8 years. We haven't seen a lot from the federal government. It's a little close this year, so maybe we could see more. And I think that we're in line for it.
Yeah, no, I think it would be a good conversation. MP Caputo did not contact me during the election process to ask priorities on Clearwater. Some of the other candidates did. So I think it's overdue for that conversation.
Yeah, I'm hoping that he didn't call and ask because he already knew, but I don't think so. Anyway.
Sorry, as a follow-up to that, if you would like staff to send that letter, then we could use a resolution around that.
Okay, I'd like to make the motion that a letter be written for congratulations to MP Frank Caputo, along with an invitation to attend a council meeting to hear priorities of council.
Seconded by Councillor Herring. Further discussion? All those in favor? That passes.
Okay, thank you.
Opposed? No. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And then also just to spoke to some members of the Clearwater Adult Ball. They are looking to build a playground. I don't know if that's been discussed anywhere.
First time hearing of it.
Yeah, me too. But so due to liability, we had to remove a playground from down at the ball fields quite some time ago. Since they've been, it sounds like they're doing 4 and 5 tournaments a year down there. It's a family, event. They've got often between 30 and 35 kids. They want to start doing some fundraising. So this is sort of a heads up that they will be writing a letter to council and asking for some assistance. They plan on doing some fundraising themselves, and they will be doing it in honor of Tara Carter, who made sure that ball stayed alive and continued even after the pandemic. So that's just a heads up that is coming, that the ball community will be looking for that. Speaking of which, Tara Carter's, her service is this Saturday, and also to acknowledge the passing of Len Solos, long-standing wonderful sage man who had a lot. And I also wondered from staff if there was an update on the community arts application and that committee. Did we get enough, or is there room for more? In which case I did have somebody reach out.
To the last point, Mr. Prime.
Yes, Councillor Sim through Mayor Blackwell. We did get several applicants, and that will be coming at likely the next meeting of council, the recommendation for those appointments.
So just trailing on there, you have somebody else that's interested. Is there still a possibility of submitting an application?
Yeah, is there room for that?
I believe we set the closing date at April 25th.
That's right, but is there room for it? Like, I don't know how many applicants. You said you've got several. I don't know what several means, and I can't remember
so
what the criteria
I believe we had
was.
about 6 applicants, and then I don't think we would even select all 6 in terms of the size of the committee that was already established in the terms of reference.
Okay, so there's always the opportunity at a future time to add somebody. I mean,
Yes.
they could always send their letter in, and it could just land here.
So I did refer them to Mr. Prime to send in a letter, and even if they are an alternate, I think that they would be a great addition. But
And there's an application process online that they can go through. It kind of auto submits it, so they can look at the district website to kind of submit that application.
But is the portal closed?
Nope, it would still be open.
It would still be open. Okay, yeah, that's great.
Okay, good. Thank you. Ooh, that was a lot. Councillor Bratton, quickly.
I was just curious if I could I don't know if I need to make a motion or whatever. Could we get the RCMP in to do an update, or they don't have to physically come in, just do a year roundup of how it's gone, what's been going on, and how we're faring in that realm?
Yeah, I think staff can touch base with Sergeant Simpson and see where he's at as far as our next quarterly.
Yeah.
I'm
And-
sure it's quarterly is very close to being here. So that would be the standard.
That
time
would be
for
great.
Yeah.
And I have one more thing, May Day Parade, May 17th, Saturday. Everybody come.
What? 17th? What? May Day Parade.
May Day, what did I say? Did I not say that?
You
May
sort
Day
of-
Parade, sorry, I said it really fast. I was trying to get it in. May Day Parade is on May 17th, Saturday, 11 a.m. It's on the same place it's been the last 2 years, from Kershaw Sub to Super Save, essentially, the bridge. And come and hang out and have fun.
Okay.
I will get back to you. I haven't had to say it a whole bunch of times this time.
Something to do with Clearwater.
We need to tighten that up.
Okay.
Anyways, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Moving on, is there anything under CAO's report at this time?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Didn't figure there was. We did lots of talking for you already. So, moving on to item 16.1. This is in relation to transit. Recommendation 1 is the council approve Clearwater Transit 2024 to 2025 annual operating agreement, and that council authorize mayor and chief administrative officer to execute the required documents. Questions of staff? If not, mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Matheson, seconded by anybody else? By Councillor Frizzle. Any further discussion on this? This is pretty standard stuff at this point. If we want to make changes to this agreement in the future, we did hear what that process is. And just maybe the next, get a hold of staff or we have a conversation. Councillor Simpson.
I am interested about certainly that funding formula, working on the demographics. I really liked your idea of like the Saturday service or extending that. I'm not always 100% sure that our circle route is working the way that we had thought. And so what do we need out of this meeting to move forward on that, to make those changes?
I think that enough notes were taken that staff can have a conversation, and Transit heard it directly from us. I mean, she indicated that she was, if we just say that we want to have a look into the specifics, especially of the Kamloops route and where those people originated, I think that's going to get us some of that. This particular meeting, I don't know what to tell you because it just sort of came up.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm wondering if we do need staff to direct staff to set something up. This motion certainly needs to go through, but what are next steps so that we don't miss that window that she talked about?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I don't have an answer for that.
Mr. Prime?
He's working on it.
Too many tasks. Councillor Sim, through the chair, the last time a service level review was done, looking back, it was 2016 was the actual last time. So when they're talking about in terms of equity, looking across all the local governments that they have to assist, you can certainly argue that, having it been almost 10 years, it looks like it would be our time. So that was something staff will certainly take away in our discussions with them and, push that service level review gets done.
So I guess what
likely by next year.
Right. So so what I am asking for is, do you need any direction from council to pursue those conversations, to look at maybe stretching the service to meet the needs of the North Thompson?
Right,
like
so-
they what they said in their presentation is that if we want to look at changing anything, now is the time. So what's the steps to do that? Do you need anything from council, or will staff do that and then come back to us?
Just before I let Mr. Johnson go, they were coming back with the numbers already. I believe it would be a little bit ahead of the whole game for us until we see those numbers. Once BC Transit sort of provided those numbers, cost estimates on additional service levels, that would be when we could come back to council and then get the next steps.
Except I'm never really sure about the speed of work. right? Like that's a big area that they've got. So maybe they'll come back with numbers as a gentle inquiry. But if we're actually relying on it to start a different conversation about how do we stretch service, maybe we need to be more proactive from this table. I don't know how council feels about that. Councillor Frizzle?
I actually agree that we need to do a little push, just to let them know that we're serious. We want to do a change, add something, take something, whatever it is, but we need to have that review. If they're going to increase the Saturday or change the whole transit route.
So just a caution on that, we did do a dig into Saturday in the past. Until we actually have numbers, it's really hard to do that because the last time we did look at it, it wasn't economic, it wasn't feasible with what the numbers we had at the time. So if I think Mr. Prime has indicated that BC Transit is anticipating that, so I would say that we leave this to staff to try to gather that information, if for at least a meeting, and then if we don't, then maybe we do a resolution directing staff to do that. But if there's something already in the background and process that's going to get us some of those numbers, so we can make an educated decision, then so be it. Let's leave it to that. And Mr. Prime or Mr. Johnson want to say further to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This also ties into where I mentioned earlier that staff is working with the TNR around all of our shared agreements that we have. This is one of them. The transit is one. Actually, both forms, the Valley Connector and then the local transit. So it's one of the ones we're talking about. We have had some discussions with BC Transit around it and how the process works. So once we're further along in that process, and have had some discussions with the TNRD as well, we'll come back to council before any changes are made to anything and say, here's what we're suggesting as far as changes with the MOUs with the TNRD. But you're right, it ties then into information that we have about ridership for transit specifically. Clearly, though, we need to have that current information, right? The other word of caution for transit when we started this conversation is that if there's changes to routes or anything else, it is a slow burn because they have to get out the new schedules, allow people time to adjust to those schedules. So changes don't happen really quickly, but they are possible, and we're working on it. It's an ongoing process.
Councillor Frizzle.
Just a clarification on the Saturday. My personal thought on the Saturday is not a Saturday route in Clearwater, the trip to Kamloops and back. So that would be like a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday route.
Yeah,
and what I'm talking about.
And that, no, I think we're all on the same page with that. Great point by CAO Johnson. Some of those numbers now that we can access that new data that tells us where people originate their rides. Currently, we have a very set rate funding agreement with the TNRD as to how we pay for this, a 60-40 split. If the majority of those rides are originating in the TNRD and ending up in Kamloops, especially for the connector, then we need to have a discussion, much like we need to do on mosquito control, which is we heavily fund, but the action actually happens primarily in the TNRD, not within the District of Clearwater on our agreement with that. There are multiple things here that we need to have a conversation about whether or not these are equitable funding with the TNRD, and that is what is in process right now. So yes, let's get the data, but also there is who's going to pay for those people.
Yeah, I understand that. And I think also with that data is if we're running the community one 5 times a day, but it's only being utilized in the morning. So we're spending money on those afternoon ones, and could that same funding, that same driver, that same bus be actually used on a Wednesday? So we've got Monday, Wednesday, Friday opportunity for people who need to access, especially for medical appointments. I mean, that's my big concern is that without, the loss of a commercial transportation, how do we do that? So if we're just spinning our wheels literally here in Clearwater, how do we look at that? So it's not just the funding, it's also the use.
Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, effective, good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the questions that you ask, Councillor, are good questions, but it's also questions that are typically handled through a service review process, and they can actually, when they do service reviews, and I sat through a couple of these with BC Transit, they will sit and they'll say, here's your utilized routes, here's your underutilized routes, here's your opportunities to optimize the system. So, and we can't sit here and say, well, this route's good or bad or looks weak. We need those numbers. Without the numbers, you're just like you say, spinning your wheels. So I think if council really wants to engage in that, the other opportunity is also to send a letter asking for a service review, and it might go in in a service review, which means different things to different people. I think with transit, we're not saying we don't want the service. We're just saying come and take a look at the effectiveness of our service, and that's what they do for a living. They're really great at it. It's again a slow one to get them here and actually engaged. Although a lot of that is done just desktop, right? They can sit down and figure what those routes are, but that would be a good way to go from the perspective of, are we using the existing hours effectively? That's the kind of questions that their service reviews answer very well.
So that's what I'm asking. Is there anything that the staff would need right now? She mentioned that it could be a while because where you are in the queue and when your recent one was. She also mentioned that if there were to be any changes, this is the window. So just noting how long these conversations had gone on, what is your suggestion from council right now?
So we could do a motion to that effect, but we have a current motion here that
Yep.
we need to complete till before that one. So let's deal with the motion, with the recommendation 1. Any further discussion on that? If not, all those in favor, let's clear that off the table. All those in favor? Okay. Opposed? This is agreement we need to move forward.
No, it does. I'm just going to oppose it because it's passed. Like, it doesn't have to be.
Sorry.
I oppose.
Okay. And then let's deal with recommendation 2 as well. What's the difference between 1 and 2?
The year 2025.
Oh, 2025 to 2026, okay. So there is recommendation 2. What is the desire of council? Mover and a seconder on it? Or, go ahead, Mr. Brown.
And just to clarify, Your Worship, the 2024-2025 AOA was initially passed by council, and then we heard about the regionalization the next day. Council rescinded the motion to pass the AOA. That's why we're kind of doing that catch up now that regionalization is done. We still actually need that AOA from last year.
Okay, so this is keeping us legal on things that have already happened, and now this one on recommendation 2 is moving forward for the next calendar.
Correct, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we want to move forward with the next calendar year with agreement with BC Transit? Moved by Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor Bratton. Further discussion? All those in favor?
What happens if we don't? Just asking.
The bus stops.
Okay.
That would be my understanding.
Well, no, I just, like we've gone through sort of the regionalization. We won that one. We've got some funding things. I just wanted to ask, what are the consequences? Asked and answered.
No, and now I think I did all those in favor.
What's that? Sorry, Ms. Klassen?
Save some money. Fair enough. But a lot of people lose out. I'm just going to clarify all those in favor. Okay, that passes. Now, Councillor Sim, would you like to make a recommendation that staff write a letter asking BC Transit to initiate a service review at the next reasonable opportunity, or something along those lines?
Yeah, to make the request that staff correspond with BC Transit and to ask about a service review, noting the window of time she alluded to in her presentation. Let me think on that just a minute.
Okay, we have a seconder on that one.
I'll second it.
Okay. Mr. Prime, do you have all that information? And then Mr. Johnson? Or Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That wording of that
Yeah, I'm with
resolution
you.
is a little bit.
I agree.
And I just want to clarify one other item, Councillor Sim through the chair. The window of time was separate from this transit service review. They're coming with those numbers for that extra service. They're going to give us a couple different scenarios. Once that's provided to staff, we can provide that to council. Like they're saying, we have until September to get their data they're
Okay.
going to give us. It's kind of separate from the transit service.
The additional Valley Connector is already anticipated. They're coming to us with those numbers
That's correct.
already.
They're already working on
regardless
those
of a
numbers.
service review.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so then for staff to initiate a conversation to request a service review of the entire system that affects Area A in the District of Clearwater.
Clearwater and area.
Clearwater and area. Does that
okay.
work better? Is that enough to go on?
Okay. And seconder on that, was that okay? Okay, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? Okay. Anybody opposed? No, not at this point. Okay, thank you. Fully noting it's probably going to take 2 years. Anyways. Yeah. Thank you. Moving on to item 17.1, 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw. This is for adoption. Do I have a mover and a seconder on this? We have seen this multiple times. Thank you, Councillor Herring. Seconded by Councillor Matheson. District of Clearwater, 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw number 323, 2025. A bylaw to adopt the 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan, whereas section 165 of the community charter requires that council shall adopt a 5-year financial plan. Now therefore the council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as a District of Clearwater bylaw number 323, 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. And then we move on to annual tax rate bylaw. There are 2 recommendations there. You do have that in your, I think, what is the desire of council? Or questions of staff first, if you would like. Oh, wait a minute, there's a presentation.
Thought so.
Ms. Klassen, are you doing a presentation on this?
If it's the desire of council to just move the readings, I'm okay with that as well.
Does council wish to see a presentation on the tax rate bylaw, since we are going to first and second reading and third reading today?
I wondered if you wanted to share some of the highlights. We've spent a lot of time on this. This is a difficult budget. And for anybody who's just weighing in, what would you want to share?
Sure.
You're getting the presentation.
Getting
Just
the presentation.
the expedited version of it.
So just a reminder to council that this process is circular, and once we finish one item, we're going to go on to the next item. So right now we are in the property taxation mode, where we're going to pass, hopefully, the property tax bylaw and start that whole process with the notices and things like that coming soon to you. Oh. This is the resolution we're asking for to be read first, second, and third reading. Just a few highlights. The financial bylaw requires property tax revenue to be $3.6 million, which is about 7.8% higher than 2024. The increase is distributed amongst all the property classes. There was a slight change in the revenue distribution as per council conversations between the classes. The residential class will drop by 3%, while the business other class will increase by about 3%. The average, the approximate increase for the single family residential properties will be about $141 or $11.75. And the average increase for the average businesses will be about $580 per year, or about $48 per month. Here we see how it will be distributed. You'll notice that, yeah, I can't really see my pointer. The residential, the 3% drop in residential from 48% to 45%, and the business other, the increase from 20% to 23%. So the average residential property will pay about $117 per month, as we discussed earlier. A majority of that will be for roads and fleet at $39. $28 or $29 will go to savings. So that's all our transfers to reserves. General government cost is about $12. Fire emergency and bylaw is about $12. Recreation culture events is $11. The NTSP is $5. Community development is $5. Transit is $3, and economic development is $1. Just a little bit of information. When I look at the last 4 years, the average monthly payment for a residential is between $105 and $117. Not a lot of swings there. When I look at the average business over the last 4 years, they were paying between $400 and $581 a month, and we were coming in at $503. Now, just looking at what the other requisitions that we have in our bylaw, we have school, TNRD, hospital, policing, BC assessment, and MFA. Municipal taxes take up the 59% of the total tax notices, and the district collects on behalf of these other agencies. Last year, these agencies increased by 5%, and in 2025, they're increasing by 6%. And here is just a graphic on where the split is between these agencies. The average residential, all taxes in, for the community will be about $2,600. That's with the municipal tax, the school tax, regional hospital, TNRD, police, and everything all in. The average business will pay about $9,600. And quickly moving forward, hopefully we have the adoption. We have 3 readings today, the adoption sometime before the 14th. There is a little bit of legislative reporting that is required, and then providing all the reports on our websites and things like that. And then we start the process over again. And finally, here is the tax rate bylaw resolution we're looking for today.
Questions of staff? Go ahead, Councilor.
Not a question, but certainly a comment in the fact that I'm always very aware that what we are asking our homeowners to pay is their after-tax dollars. And businesses have a different opportunity than homeowners do, and that the creep is real. And I think I'm excited to start the process over again, and certainly to get some feedback. We're seeing more and more citizens who are coming forward with ideas. I mean, what they are looking for is value for their tax dollars, and it is our job to make sure that we are meeting that expectation and ensuring service levels and listening to that. Because they keep going up, as does everything, but the average wages.
Just one further comment. Just want to remind council that the average BC home will pay about $2,000 or $2,050 in BC. And out of the 160 communities in BC, we were rated 50 of the least. So we're on the least third.
Paying taxes per capita or per two excellent points in the presentation. Thank you for the 59%, which of the annual tax bill requisition is the District of Clearwater. The rest of that 41% is other entities that we are collecting on their behalf, which is important to point out to people, because essentially we have no control over that. And then once again, thank you for your work on this and your team's work on this. It's I learn something new every single time, and it is a lot. And it'd be nice to get this one completed, and then maybe have like a 2 or 3 week breather till we start the next one. maybe till like June 30th at least that'd be nice. So some light lifting for a while. Okay, so we do have 2 recommendations there under 17.2. Do I have a mover and a seconder on 1, which is to be introduced and read for a first and second time?
He did.
Councillor Bratton, District of Clearwater 2025 Annual Tax Rates Bylaw Number 324, 2025. A bylaw to establish 2025 annual tax rates, whereas pursuant to Section 165 of the Community Charter, Council has prepared a 5-year financial plan for the period of January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025, and whereas the 5-year financial plan as presented has been considered and approved by Council, and whereas it is necessary under Section 197 of the Community Charter to establish tax rates to raise the revenue for municipal purposes identified in the year 2025 of the 5-year financial plan, and whereas to meet its taxing obligation in relation to other local governments or public bodies, certain amounts are to be collected for the 2025 year 2025 by means of rates established by the District of Clearwater. Now, therefore, the Council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the District of Clearwater 2025 Annual Tax Rates Bylaw Number 324, 2025. All those in favor? Thank you. And then there is recommendation two that this be read for a third time. Moved by Councillor Frizzle, seconded by Councillor Matheson. Thank you. District of Clearwater 2025 Annual Tax Rates Bylaw Number 324, 2025, a bylaw to establish 2025 annual tax rates, whereas pursuant to Section 165 of the Community Charter, Council has prepared a 5-year financial plan for the period of January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025, and whereas the 5-year financial plan as presented has been considered and approved by Council, and whereas it is necessary under Section 197 of the Community Charter to establish a tax rates to raise the revenue for municipal purposes identified in the year 2025 of the 5-year financial plan, and whereas to meet its taxing obligation in relation to other local governments or public bodies, certain amounts are to be collected for the year 2025 by means of rates established by the District of Clearwater. Now, therefore, the Council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as District of Clearwater 2025 Annual Tax Rates Bylaw Number 324, 2025. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. Now we get to Chief Smith and Fire.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. Sorry.
Yeah, that was the other. Oh, we heard that.
Hey, I haven't been here for a while. Sorry.
Okay. It's been a long day so far.
Has,
you get forgiven on that one.
My bylaw amendment is a lot shorter than what you just read out. So essentially what we're doing with this one is replacing Schedule A with a new Schedule A. Most of it's some updated terms, the training standard name, and there's a new section on wildland firefighting training requirements. That's it.
That's the high notes. Are there any
questions?
questions of that to staff before we go to readings on this? Seeing none, we have recommendation 1 that the Fire Department Regulations Bylaw Number 223, Amendment Bylaw Number 325, 2025 be introduced and read for a first and second time. Mover and seconders? Moved by Councillor Herring, seconded by Councillor Matheson. District of Clearwater Bylaw Number 325, 2025. District of Clearwater Bylaw to amend District of Clearwater Volunteer Fire Department Regulations Bylaw Number 233, 2021. Whereas Section 137 of the Community Charter provides that the power to adopt a bylaw includes the power to amend or repeal it, and whereas the Council of the District of Clearwater wishes to amend District of Clearwater Volunteer Fire Department Regulations Bylaw Number 233, 2021. Now, therefore, the Council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the Volunteer Fire Department Regulations Bylaw Number 233, Amendment Bylaw Number 325, 2025. All those in favor? And do I have a mover and a seconder for the third reading? Moved by Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor Bratton.
It's a dry day.
District of Clearwater Bylaw Number 325, 2025. Bylaw to amend District of Clearwater Volunteer Fire Department Regulations Bylaw Number 233, 2021. Whereas Section 137 of the Community Charter provides that the power to adopt a bylaw includes the power to amend or repeal it. And whereas the Council of the District of Clearwater wishes to amend District of Clearwater Volunteer Fire Department Regulations Bylaw Number 233, 2021, and now therefore the Council of the District of Clearwater, an open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the Volunteer Fire Department Regulations Bylaw number 233, Amendment Bylaw number 325, 2025. All those in favor? Cool. And that is passed. Now the fun stuff. There is correspondence, two letters, both response requested. The first one is in relation to support for redesigning the Kamloops BC Cancer Center Care Center. Thoughts, questions, Councillor Sim?
I would wonder if you could give us your perspective from being on the hospital board, the TNRD. You've sat through a number of these meetings, presentations, and help us really understand what's being said around other tables.
Sure, I'll give you the Coles notes. That makes me sound really old because I think Coles is gone now. So it's been identified by local stakeholders, including the MLAs from the region and the service area, that there are a couple things missing from this cancer center that are not missing from other cancer centers, including the one being built in Nanaimo in parallel to this one. The PET CT scanner and some other services that still require patients to go to Kelowna for that treatment or for that diagnosis, whereas that does not happen elsewhere. It does actually happen in the Lower Mainland. The BC Cancer Center off of Broadway by Vancouver General. Some of those patients actually do have to go to places like St. Paul's for chemo and some radiation, or chemo and some of the other diagnosis stuff, but it's a different thing. St. Paul's is in a straight line, an easy Uber ride, taxi ride, or, I'm going to say 20 to 30 block car ride, or even transit. Whereas you're talking about people in our region coming from as far away as Williams Lake on sort of the outskirts of the service area for the cancer center, going to Kamloops for part of their treatment, but also still having to go to Kelowna for certain treatments like the PET CT scanner, which identifies it's a treatment diagnostic device that lets the team properly target cancer treatments inside the body. So what's being asked for here is a letter of support to suggest that the current government move forward with actually adding those services to Kamloops, or redesigning the cancer center at the very least to consider those services, a place for those services to happen in the future. I also am aware that there is some fundraising for some of the equipment for some of these services that's happening in the background. But what is not currently in the cancer center design is the actual place to put it in the building. So that's why this letter of support is coming, request for a letter of support is coming forward, if that sort of explains it. That was not the Coles note, that was the whole Shakespeare.
So supplemental to that, one of the things that I didn't hear you mention, but I wondered if this was something that was considered, was just that that the cancer clinic is still separated from the pharmacy, and the pharmacy is actually an integral part of the cancer delivery. Has that been something that has come up through conversations, or? Yes,
and there's been assurances that the pharmacy and even the other services that are going to be offered to cancer patients inside Royal Inland will be fully integrated, because right now the BC Cancer Service, which is a different, and most people don't know this or don't understand this unless you've been through the process, is not the same as the standard medical system. They are two separate systems that sort of work together but really don't talk to each other. So there has been assurances from the province, but by the time this cancer center opens in Kamloops, that those systems will fully talk to each other. So if the patient is receiving, say, chemo inside the hospital or picking up drugs, that will be directly connected with the cancer agency system in the building next door. Should there be a pharmacy in this thing? Yes, absolutely. Should be a separate service. But at this point, the desire is to get a building built and then figure out some of these details in the future. I'm ambivalent on this letter of support. If we were to write one, I would be much happier not using the template and just sending our own version in, because at this point I see this as a little bit partisan, just the way it's laid out. But I do support the points in it.
I'll make a recommendation to write a letter of support using the district perspective and our experience.
Okay, sounds good. Seconded by Councillor Frizzle, thirded by Councillor Matheson. All those in favor, and I will work with staff to highlight some points in there to do that. So thank you. The next one is 18.2, letter re-warehouser bike pump track. Why this is coming forward in correspondence is this organization has sent us a letter, but they haven't put a formal request forward in the way that Rotary or others have at this point. So do we want to engage? Do we want to ask for them to come do a formal presentation? What is the desire of council on this one? Councillor Sim.
So what I wondered is on for our plans is that we've got a park master plan coming next year. Is this right? A review?
Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we do have we are planning for a parks master plan. It's in our budget for 2026. Typical timing for that is by the time you put it out, you get the master plan process done, you get the results. You wouldn't have the results in time to do construction or any significant changes, probably till 2027. So, and that is one of the suggestions that is obvious, right? And you could make, by inference, draw the same conclusion with the dog park.
Exactly.
Maybe you wait till you get a parks master plan. That's council's option. It would result in a more holistic view at our parks. The downside is it also results in a long delay, results in cost increases, which happen regularly. And, you know, people would feel, particularly with the dog park concept, which I know is the discussion point here, people have been asking for a long time. And, you know, in my opinion, one of the ways that things get delayed quite significantly in municipalities is if when you put them off to master planning process, because sometimes that's just delays things overly much, right?
Absolutely. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how do we manage a dog park conversation, now this proposal?
At the same time. So consultation is going out on the dog park, and there has been just some requests for expansion of the area, but I'll let Mr. Johnson talk to that. And then this conversation is now out there as well, so I'm quite sure we're going to get feedback on both, but go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I actually think this is an interesting proposal. And I think it's actually at kind of an opportune time to consider it. An opportune because council has already approved that we go out to the public and we talk about the dog park and how does it fit in, do some actual specific neighborhood engagement. The interesting thing about it, despite the map or the little overhead layout that they show in the agenda showing that it takes a significant part of the park, it's really those blocks they put in there would be movable anywhere within the park because the park is pretty flat, right? That park is 5 acres. Currently 4 acres are undeveloped. So 4 acres essentially in trees. And that park would have the room to have both of those new things on the park. The interesting thing to consider with that though is the neighborhood impacts on that would actually be cumulative. So if you have dogs and then you have a bike park, they both generate their own or have the potential to generate sound and parking and everything else and a little bit more people in that area. So I think if you really want to think about it, and council is any interest at all in pursuing it or allowing this to go ahead prior to the master parks plan, then I think the thing to do possibly would be to expand the area of consultation. Current council agreed with the dog park to talk to the neighbors specifically within 100 meters of that facility, which resulted in, I think, 15 or 17 neighbors being talked. The potential would exist to expand that and talk to a broader group of neighbors, because there is going to be a bit more noise, a bit more traffic, all that, if there's two facilities together. We could do that and as well have some type of a public engagement process with it. So if it's someone who just, they're not a neighbor, but they're really keenly interested one way or t'other, then they could come to some type of a process we could have and then return those results to council. And that doesn't tie council's hands to say, we're pressuring you to do this, because we're not. That's a council decision, and I think you need more information on how it would be received by the neighbors and what the general interest is in the community. And because we haven't started that consultation process yet for the dog park, we could have a combined process for that if that's council's desire to do that. I don't even want to suggest we look at cost yet or operating costs. We're premature on that. I think the idea would be to get, does the community support this? Is this broad-based support? And if it is, then we'll take that back to council, and then council can direct us further based on that. Do we go out and do cost estimates and all the other due diligence to the process? But I think the time is really great from the perspective of being able to combine two proposals into one engagement. Keep it specific enough to each one that that if there is a difference in what the public wants, that we would be able to pick that up. So for example, if people said yay to the dog park and no to a bike park, hopefully we could bring that back to council then and say, yeah, here's what the results are. I'm personally think that both of them will receive pretty good uptake, right? There's a lot of dogs and there's a lot of bikes in this community, but I think the due diligence would suggest before council moves anywhere further is go and check with the public.
And I would note that in the polygons listed in this proposal they're actually only asking for just under an acre of, as you know, stated 5 acres of land. There's probably an acre and a half used up by the Dragonfly Splash Park area. And I can't remember the size of the dog park, but it's not. I mean, there's still a lot of space to fit around these things. So second point being, I know we're probably going to face some NIMBYism on the dog park or this proposal, but at the same time, I mean, this is one of many parks we have in Clearwater. It is centrally located, and it's a park. You know, these proposals, both of them, talk about maintaining a lot of the trees, but would go a long way towards our fire smart needs, because they would be creating an environment where dogs and bikes eliminate or keep underbrush low. And you know, I mean, you can't, other than Dutch Lake, you can't get more centrally located in this town. So I think hooking them to joint consultation, but not necessarily saying that we need to do both in order to move forward, I think is a great idea. And I would like to see that happen sooner than later, because these are both volunteer driven and potentially volunteer funded through organizations, and I don't want them to lose steam. Councillor Brun.
So this one says community-driven cycling facility. Does that, how does that work? We still maintain it. If they or if they build it, we maintain it? Is that?
Well, in theory, Councillor, that one way that could be would be that we would maintain that, and that could be contractual, that could with an extension of our parks contract, it could be with our own staff, but that's something we need to bring back to you for information so you understand the estimated cost of annual cost of maintaining it. You know, there's no point having a proposal in front of you unless you understand the full costing. Right. The other thing to consider is that while both of these groups have access to resources, there's a very real possibility that based on the budget, that the budget is not going to the budget's going to exceed the resources available, so that at some point there might be a request of council to put some dollars into this.
Right.
So those are the possibilities with this. And like the mayor alluded to, that park at 5 acres is a large area. Perhaps when we do some engagement around what that park looks like, maybe there's other ideas. Maybe I was thinking, given that the front of the park already has a trail on it, maybe there's an opportunity to put a trail all the way around the park for a walking path.
Right.
Just don't say disc golf. I see Councillor Matheson getting ready for a question here.
Yeah, I just noticed there's a lot of support from individual people. Are they an actual society, or can we deal with them as individual people when it comes to working with them? Do they have to form a society?
Thank you. That's a great question. And I don't believe that they're part of a society. Based on the way it's signed letters, it looks like they're interested individuals. There's nothing preventing the district from working with interested individuals, because we're not talking about giving this park to them. We're talking about it still staying as a city park. If an individual wants to contribute their time, their money to a city venture, that's entirely doable.
Would this be something that they could partner with Rotary? I mean, Rotary can get matching funds. Maybe there could be a good relationship in there.
I think Rotary or the Wells Gray Outdoors Club, which does the mountain biking trails, and I do note there's a lot of shared members with this group, just, you know, from knowledge. I think there's opportunities, and it would probably be good to suggest to them that that's a good path forward, is to be actually linked to one of these organizations. Councillor Sim.
I just want to go back to the last meeting, and I think that the discussion had been, because the word used in the report was engagement, whereas what the report indicated that only the homeowners within 100 meters would be contacted, which isn't really engagement or consultation in generally its essence. So we talked at the last meeting, actually hear what other people in the community would be looking for in a dog park. And upon hearing that, what would be implemented, and then how that would impact the neighborhood, and as if they are in agreement with it. So I just want to make sure, how are we proceeding, or is this added a new question to it? What does consultation and engagement look like, or do you envision?
Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, the intent with this would be to expand the area of where we send direct letters and let people know, hey, your property potentially is impacted. But I also think we need to, as you discussed, extend that engagement so that we actually have, and not sure exactly what that looks like. We're open to suggestions, but potentially a public meeting, bring people in, advertise it well, and get their input. And I think it's really interesting with this one in particular, because I think the general public will maybe be possibly more favorable than the immediate neighbors, given that, you know, you don't have the impact to your neighborhood. And council then needs to weigh what that relative support means, right? And that's why it's got to come back to council after that process. I'm hoping everybody is supportive of both sides of it, but we don't know that, right? And I think it's important not to slant the process before you even start and say, hey, this is going to go ahead. I think it should be true engagement where people get a chance to, if they don't like it, they shouldn't feel that they're intimidated or that is going to go ahead anyways, right? I think it should be a true engagement process.
So with that, do you see that being facilitated by an outside entity?
Personally, I don't think that's necessary. Personally, I think the concepts of these are pretty easy, right? We can draw on a layout. Here's where we're thinking is the potential for a dog park. Here's where we're thinking is the potential for a bike park, as well as some simple layouts possibly of other bike parks and other dog parks. Just here's generally what we're thinking about. I don't know that we need to bring in a consultant to do that engagement. I think we can send out notifications to the community that we're having a meeting and here's what we're talking. Just come and tell us your opinions. Lay it out on the board and just hear it out, right?
I guess what I want to be careful of is the fact that, we inform people what our intention is. We receive feedback. This is what we heard. This is what we listened. Like there's some steps, and I only look at what the school district has done with regards to the consultation about catchment changes, etc. It's because people sometimes hold volatile opinions, and what do we do with that? So if you're a neighbor and you disagree with this, what happens with that? So the reason for an outside person to come in is to maybe guide it. I think this could be a game changer about social infrastructure within a community that we haven't seen before, and to make sure that we do it right, to make sure that we're capturing all of our taxpayers as well as those who would be impacted. I don't know if anybody else has got any thoughts on that. It's not intended to complicate, but to get it right.
Yeah, I don't want to spend money on a consultant, but I think that we should, let staff cast the engagement, direct letters within beyond the 100 meter. I mean, essentially, let's capture the neighborhood. That's the subdivision, and then this is gonna make news. There's no doubt about that. We can pump it on Facebook and that sort of thing. We are going to get lots of input from the community. The direct letter response will probably come through one channel. The general stuff will come through another channel. If we get a resounding 60+% no to this, then we move forward with that, or we don't move forward with that. Spending $10,000 or $15,000 on a consultant when we are going to hit somewhere, if we get close to a 50-50, then maybe we go down that road. But I think there's going to be a fairly simple level of support to this, and as long as we're capturing it with an understanding of the direct neighbors around it, and we can separate that out versus the broader community.
Okay, and that's what I'm talking about. As long as that there's a process, like we're talking, if there's 60% support, but 60% of support comes from 80% who live 2 kilometers away, and then how do we make sure that we're assessing, that direct neighborhood input? And it's not a download on it. I just want to know the process of how we've done it. We haven't done one for a while. We've got a whole new team, and I'm interested because I think it's a great topic.
If you'd like to tackle that, or we can say staff will get back to you with that, or it's your choice.
I just had a great idea.
Oh,
staff will get back to you on
that. Can I make another suggestion? Why doesn't staff get back to us?
Well, if actually, in seriousness, we can parse out information of people responding to letters. That's easy. We know their addresses. We know who we send letters to. As we get further down, I propose that'll be the first thing we do is send those letters out. Then we hold a public meeting. Council's, of course, welcome to attend it. I also think it's important to be careful our language on this. I think our language should be that these are proposals we've received from the public.
Totally
it shouldn't be that this is what council wants to do. It's proposals we received from the public, and we're trying to analyze this. Are we in favor of it? Sure, we all want to see amenities, but they got to be placed in the right place, and they have to be done in a way that minimizes community impacts, right? So I think I think the language is really important of how we bring this forward, that we're gauging public opinion on this.
I think you're right. I want to go back to just understanding what you're saying. Like if we have a public session and then follow up with letters, like why would we do the letters if they hasn't necessarily seen the public presentation?
Yeah, we'll take that in mind and think about that. In some ways, homeowners sometimes feel slighted if, well, you're doing it right beside my property and no one talked to me. So you want to make sure from a respectful communication perspective, the people who will be most directly impacted have the chance to hear it from us as opposed to hearing it.
Yeah, that's fair.
From, mind you, the word is out there anyways. I guess they'll hear it.
Well, and that's all it is trying to just mitigate it. And then, well, why didn't I get a chance? Why do they only get, like, it's all communication, as you've said. Anyway, sounds like you've got it under hand.
Go ahead, Councillor Brad.
Only because we're talking about parks. This is a little bit divergent from that. Yesterday, there was a member of the public that had to climb on the swing set to get the swings up. off. I'm curious of our liability to that, and why do our parks manager contractor, is that part of their daily routine, is to make sure that swings are up and running?
Safety inspections. What's the? I know bathrooms and things like that are one thing. I'm quite sure we probably have regular scheduled looks at things, different levels.
I'm not sure about our liability for people climbing up on top of the swings, but we do have signage there that use your park at your own risk, things like that. The parks contractor is at that park daily,
Yeah, that's
or
what I
twice a day actually, open and close washrooms, and it is, contingent on them paying attention to broken playground equipment, things like that, and as usual, you see it on Facebook after somebody solved the problem and stuff like that. Nobody called to tell us ahead of time that there was a problem.
So that's maybe we could bring it up to the parks contractor to check out the swings.
Yes.
Periodically.
Yes, I will.
Seems to be a hot thing.
One other thing for council too, with that park, we're due for playground replacement at that park, and it is on our budget for the next several years coming up, that playground has reached its life expectancy.
For that park. Okay, good. Thank you for that. That's another consideration to put into here. And if we get a lot of public interest, especially around fundraising,
So what would you like to do?
we're not doing anything. Staff's going to come back to us with some information, and I don't think we need a resolution for that. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, if we could have a resolution supporting that we go out for engagement, and I hate to correct you, Your Worship.
I'm fine with being corrected if it's what's needed to move forward here. So, do somebody like to make a resolution that we move forward with?
Oh, actually, somebody else did.
So, Councillor Bratton, I think we'll let Mr. Prime sort of craft what that resolution needs to stay. But it is to go forward with engagement on both of these things to assess public.
Let's have that resolution.
I'll just let him start
Well-
writing things. No, I'm just giving him time.
Rating now. Okay.
Yeah. So
You don't have to. We can help.
it might require some wording. That's words.
So how about a motion to proceed with community engagement that combines the dog park and the pump track proposals initiated by community groups, first contacting Weyerhaeuser residents and then opening to public.
That's basically what Mr. Prime wrote. But
Yeah,
I could
thank
be
you, Your
wrong.
Worship, and through to Councillor Sim. Saying Weyerhaeuser neighborhood is a bit nebulous. It's not necessarily clearly outlined. So having
300
existing-
meters, 200
300
meters.
200 meters. In it,
200 meters.
200 meters would be kind of what I would lean to.
Yeah.
That would kind of avoid some unnecessary work. Not that anybody's opinion is not necessary, but that it would.
200 meters should cover all the areas that would be affected by traffic and noise. Anything beyond that can be part of public consultation.
And then again, so it would be going out on both projects for the public consultation, like a public consultation session beyond that, and 200 meters. So.
And to that, I have had a couple of citizens tell me exactly the meterage from their backyards to the proposed dog parks. So I can very safely say that the 200 meters would cover the vast majority of them, and then anything else, they would absolutely be welcome to public consultation through a meeting process.
So I will second Councillor Bratton's.
Okay. So we have a mover and a seconder on the proposal. All those in favor? And that is for consultation. Thank you. Good conversation on that one.
You know what's exciting is that this is like really some significant projects potentially moving forward, or hearing from the citizens on ideas. And that is what's fantastic. And coming from the community.
Yep. Community driven is always great.
Yep.
There is a letter from Telqua, Utilities Commission, for information only. There are no notices of motion. Hey, I know we've almost put you to sleep, but are there any public questions?
Okay, I'm not gonna go there.
No, that's fine.
Information Center. We really, really liked it.
Yeah.
And it's not just the local artists in the area. A friend from Kamloops that works at the Anne Louise Jewelry Store in Aberdeen Mall.
Yep.
Roland, her husband, has done some fantastic earrings and different things. So
I was, you know, I'm not a person that wears earrings, if you can tell, because I don't have any, you know, but I noticed those today, and there are some really unique things in there that I have never seen anywhere else, and I think that goes a long way to the success of what this place could be with what they've done. So, any further questions or comments? Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Prime?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add a comment that came in online from Mr. Ben Flowers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And just basically his question was, could this be done through community volunteers? What's the district supply checklist on what is needed for public consultation? That was, I think, simply their question regarding the public consultation process.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how to answer that because I don't quite.
It may just be worth a conversation with the leads on the letter.
Yeah.
Just to go through the process, because although it's a volunteer-driven project, it still falls on municipal land, and just to explain maybe how that all plays out and why there is a checklist to go through things.
Yeah. So there is the ability to reply to the person who the letter address comes from. Maybe not all the signatories on it. So I think that's a fair comment. And if they're watching online, they already know. But yeah, it's
Actually
good.
had a person of contact at the top.
Yeah, so there we go. So I think we can do that. But yes, for somebody new to that process on public lands, what does it look like? What's the standard? How it rolls out? That's good. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Frizzle.